All right, so I am going to call the Capital Planning Committee to order for Monday, September 27th, 2021. It is 7:31 p.m. And we'll go right into the meeting minutes from September 13th, 2021. Just wanted to thank Karen. It was her first go around. Very good job. I do have a few edits, but I'll cede the floor to anyone else that may want to contribute.
I have a couple minor edits. There's a couple spots in here where Andrew's last name is spelled P-H-A-F-F, which is P-F-A-F-F.
Oh, my bad.
No,
Happens all the time. It's okay. I think there's a couple Malinowskis too that might be off a little bit.
Malinowski's a mouthful to type.
I'll check the names.
This one is maybe subtle, but on the second page, the second bullet, the school administration is.
Yep.
I would maybe say would be moving out under that scenario because it's still under a proposal, right? So exclude NERI, via separately determining future disposition of NERI. School administration would be moving out under that scenario instead of will be. I mean, Jason, you can.
Yeah, I mean, that goes back to obviously the work that Context Architecture had also presented to, right? That NERI just wasn't going to be. I think that I had something on this too, Jeff. I think just saying NERI would not be an option for moving departments into, I think was the gist of the conversation, and just leave it at that for that bullet point.
Okay.
Because that was at the time of the meeting where they were proposing, I believe, potential iterations where departments could move into that building. And I think we've safely eliminated that in prior discussions.
Okay.
Did you have anything else, Jeff?
Yeah, the only thing I had for documents referenced during meeting, just adding the draft August 9th, 2021 meeting minutes.
Okay, yep.
Anything else, Jeff?
And then just last, there's references to CPC throughout. So that's, there's another committee that's actually called the CPC, Karen. So you can either define it in the minutes or just refer to us as the committee, just so there's no one that would look at these cold and.
Okay.
CPC was in this meeting.
For purposes of the, I'll just take it a step further. I would just call it capital planning for this meeting because we refer to CPC in the same section where we're talking about CPA funds, which are managed by CPC. So given there was a lot of dialogue related to the true CPC, I think I would just call it capital planning or committee just to be safe for these minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, but other than that, Karen, really nice job. So thank you for taking the time.
Sure, I'm happy to. So I'll make those edits and send back to the committee. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Does anyone else have anything else? I have just a few very quick ones. Under part 4, it said no substantial updates. I think that would be substantive updates, but I could go either way on that one. And then where's my second one? I think Jeff covered that next one. So I'm good with that. Are there any other comments? All right, then I'm going to move that we accept the minutes with the edits discussed in this evening's meeting. Is there a second?
Second.
I think I heard Jeff on a second.
Yeah.
Any further discussion? All right, roll call vote. Hark.
Aye.
Palmer.
Aye.
Pfaff.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye.
And Malinowski is aye. So that is unanimous. Karen, I'm getting I got a message that you have a very unstable connection, but it looks like it restored itself. So just FYI. All right. If Brian's, Brian, next one's for you. I have just update on leasing from the treasurer. I just thought it was important. As we obviously know, we spent a lot of time on leasing and financing choices last year, and now Brian has had the opportunity to actually put it to use. And I believe the chief's vehicle fire chief's vehicle is actually in. I saw it at the station this weekend. But I think, Brian, I'd just like to give you a chance to update on how the experience has been, because I think, we're not going to do it tonight. I think it's important as we think through options for this year and start to hear capital for FY23, what the experience has been like and whether you would recommend it as we move forward. So, Brian.
Okay, thank you. You can hear me, correct?
Barely.
Okay, I'll try to speak closer to the speaker.
That's better.
There you go. So I won't take more than a minute. So yes, we leased several vehicles. The chief's vehicle gets the gold star. He came in first. I think the leasing experience for first year or so was okay. It's a good option. It's a good toolbox. I think we should keep it there and possibly use it again. I do see some issues with equipment that needs to be outfitted with radios and other optional equipment. Reason is the leasing company pays the vendors directly for their equipment. So something I didn't learn in the learning experience is that it just creates an issue with approving every line item that goes into a vehicle. So maybe in the future we want to look at equipment that's a little more streamlined.
Brian, you've been in and out, but you're really starting to fade now.
Okay, I'll try to speak quick. So in the future, hopefully we can have equipment that's a little more streamlined with not so much add-ons for various equipment, for various radios and things that you may need for a vehicle or anything else. So I'll just wrap up quick since I'm not very good. I'm on my phone. It's been a good experience. It's been a learning experience. Let's keep it in the toolbox. If there is a cost advantage significantly, we should use it. If not, probably the traditional bonding actions is preferable in that case. So that's it. Wrap it there.
Everyone got the gist of that? Okay. Thanks, Brian. I'm going to bring Chief Paulson. We're going to start with the police department items, and then we'll do a combined discussion with Chief Paulson, Chief Achilles, specifically related to one dispatch item that came on to the plate. Then we'll move to fire department. I have told both chiefs that we're going to keep this conversation to about no longer than the next 50 minutes. We do have the IT director joining us at 8:30, and I want to make sure we're respectful of everyone's time. Before we open it up for the chief, this is obviously the first of many department heads we will have in over the next couple of meetings to walk through updates they've had to their capital plans. I think it's really important to know that I candidly do not have the full picture from all the department heads yet. I would like to thank in particular the two chiefs that we have before us tonight, and Jay a little later, as well as John Parent in particular for meeting the committee's deadlines and meeting all of the committee's instructions and in requests. This is obviously a first year and a change. I'm slowly getting stuff from Karen. She's given me a lot of stuff in the last week or so that I will start to get on our share drive. And I've hit a stalling point with recreation. They've gone pretty silent. I don't know what's going on there, but I'll work with Mark to figure that out so that we can move forward with the other departments. So what I've done is I've summarized the changes that the chiefs have made and Jay have made to their plan in the memo that I put in our packet, just so everyone has it. And obviously, once we have the full picture, we'll republish the capital plan that we'll start to vote on as we move forward. I would ask, just for the sake of time and, for the first go around, that we keep our questions tonight to why is there a need? Questions around the cost are certainly in play too, but let's keep the discussion about a funding source to future meetings, because I think we need to see the full picture. We can debate all night long about how to fund some of this stuff, but I think we need to see every department's plan, which is why I'm trying to encourage the stragglers to come along before we start to make decisions on what is in front of us. So again, let's focus on the need and potential alternative sources. I'm okay with grant discussions, especially on some of these items, but let's stay away from ambulance fund, water fund, regular fund, enterprise fund, pilot payments, at least for tonight. The one exception I will make is when we get to the server discussion with Jay when it comes in for IT. So everyone okay with that sort of process? Okay. With that, Chief Paulus, welcome. Good to see you. Did he depart on me as I was talking? I think he left us. I sent him a message, but if we don't hear from him, we'll go to fire and come back to police. All right. I'm going to bring in Chief Achilles. Hey, Chief.
Good evening,
How are
everybody.
you?
I'm awesome. Thank you. How about everybody else?
Good, thanks. So I don't know where Chief Paulus went, but I think it's probably prudent for us to just keep moving. So I'm going to call a quick audible and go right to the fire stuff. I know you've submitted a lot of data to the committee, and really want to just if there's anything you want to lead with, is any opening. I don't expect you to go line by line. They've all had the chance to read all the homework, etc. But if there's anything you really want to highlight to the committee before I just do a round robin to see if they have any questions on any of the items that you're bringing forward, the timing, the cost, etc. But I'll just give you the floor first.
All right. Well, good evening, everybody. And first, I know you were talking about the Chief's car, and I just want to, on behalf of the fire department, appreciate that some of the capital planning has come to fruition for the fire department. So thank you for your continued support. I just got word that the fire engine was delivered into the dealership down in southern part of Mass. So hopefully that's something within the next month. So again, thank you. I just want to highlight a number of these things were on the plan before. There's a couple items that are new to the plan. The first one is the rescue tools. You'll see that for $40,000. That was something we sought a AFG grant for, and we were unsuccessful as of today. So that's why that's on there, and it wasn't previously identified this early up. The other item that is new to this is what's called Knox box control units. Those are the keys that the fire department carries that gives us access to those boxes on businesses and some of the residents throughout the community. We recognize in the last 4 or 5 months that they're not as secure as they're required to be. These are keys that we don't want to lose. And there are systems that we can put in each of the apparatus that will secure and log the activity and the whereabouts of that key. So I just want to make sure that's for $10,000. It could be a little bit more, but I just wanted to highlight those 2 new items to the plan that were previously not on.
All right, with that, I'm just going to go around and see if anyone has any questions on any of the chief's submissions to date. So Jeff, I'm going to start with you.
Not a whole lot. I guess the only question I would have is on the PPE, the fund that we created. So if I'm understanding this correctly, it's a 10-year or 5-year, 10-year type plan, right? So is the cost now, is it gone up from 250,000 to 400,000 over a 10-year span? Or what exactly is driving that increase?
Well, I know that we projected for the first 2 years it'd be $40,000 a year, and that the third year would be 25. And then once we identify that, because we're not doing it half department 1 year and half department the next year, it's kind of spread out. So I think these are identified funds that every year we'll start to look at and forecast out with new hires, damage gear, and the cycle of that 10 years, that what you mentioned, trying to make sure they have a set that's 5 years old and new, and that kind of works its way up to the 10-year mark.
Okay.
So that's why it's just spread out over the next rest of the plan for 25, but it could go up or it could go down.
So it's really, to your point, it's just spreading the cost over the time. Okay. Yeah, that's all I really had for now, honestly. So thank you for submitting this so timely.
Joe, I'll go to you.
Yeah, Chief, I was looking across, I mean, both the radio costs that are included in here, as well as the UTV cost. I mean, we're seeing cost increases in the 25 to 40% range. I mean, it's real kicking the kind of stuff. I mean, where's this cost increase coming? Is it just solely like the COVID slow supply costs, or are these costs just going up for other reasons?
Well, again, new to the FY23 was the rescue tools that were out a little bit further. The vehicle Knox box, but the other items were carried previously.
Yeah.
I know that we're starting to get cleaner numbers as we get closer. I like the process that you guys created, that we have to start getting reasonable quotes. So I think that's why you're seeing it a little cleaner. I don't have the exact total for the year. I think it's 393,000 but we also have included in that the last year of engine 23 pumper. And we have, I think, what would be known as the first or second year of the new engine. So almost $200,000 is in 2 fire trucks.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm looking across a bunch of different years, so I'm not really being fair about a couple of the things that I was sort of basking in the questions, but specifically the SEMA radios, which gone from 13.5 to 20, and the updated UTV cost, which has gone from 26 to 35 in the notes that I'm looking at. I mean, it's the quantity of increase that sort of has me wondering if it's the difference between an estimate and reality. I get it. If it's the difference between estimate before COVID and now, totally get it. Just interested in hearing your take what the specifics are.
I think it's a combination of a number of things that you mentioned. That I know with the UTV, when it was projected years ago, was under a grant prior to my time, and that number was carried.
Okay.
Looking at the most recent estimate for that vehicle was pretty substantial, especially for what we've designed based on that expanded program outline I provided. It's not just going to be a two-seater, what we think of as an ATV. Again, I can't speak to what was projected before.
Okay.
The radios, you're correct, is that the radio prices continue to go up. And we also recognize that we need, before the call members were never included for radios. So there was about 8 people that never got a radio, and they would get hand-me-downs. I don't think that's right. So that's probably a cost increase for there. But if you look in the out years, anything that we were able to start getting firmer numbers, and I'll caution you for FY24, everybody that has given me a forecasted estimate said these are very conservative. And I guess that's why we have a plan. We identify and earmark them, but as we get closer, the numbers get clearer and clearer.
Yeah, as I said, my first question was a little unfair. So thanks for clarifying that stuff. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Anything else, Joe?
Nope.
Andrew, you're back. Go ahead.
Thanks, Chief. The PPE, right? So that's still going to be split between St. Mark's and hopefully Fay, right?
That's my assumption, but I think the idea was to show the actual amount and carry it.
Yeah, that makes sense. I just wanted to
So
make sure I had,
Mark,
had it in my head correctly.
Mark, just confirm that 20K for this year is already committed to by St. Mark's. There's no commitment from anyone else at this point.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah.
Keep going, Andrew. Sorry.
Yep, no worries. And then the dispatch and emergency radio, I think we'll touch on that more, but should that be under the police? Because they carry the dispatch, right? It's in their budget, but.
I think we decided that we would just carry it in our capital plan. It could be in either one.
Okay. Yeah, just wondering where it would land, but
And
we
we
can.
also know that we share, and we'll get to the conversation, but it's just not the physical dispatch center, and we have shared radio equipment cost.
Okay. Everything else looks pretty good. Again, we're not going to get into ambulance fund or funding, but grants, wherever we can find a grant, let's look for some grants. So I think that's, goes without being said, but everything look, besides the cost increases, and we can cover that when we actually purchase the things and try to get it at the best price possible. But I agree, let's be conservative and get the right number in there.
Thank you.
Karen, any questions?
I don't have any additional questions, but thank you for pulling the plan together, Chief.
You're welcome.
Chief, before we go to dispatch, I don't have a question, but just maybe something that I was thinking of as I heard the questions from the others is, I think we've all seen the Trails Committee has been incredibly active in this town, especially in the last couple of years. If you could.
I'm going to put you on pause. For some reason, my alarms are going off.
Hopefully you know how to turn that off.
Yeah, I'll find out what's going on. Hold on a sec.
All right. While the chief responds to a call on his own residence, I am going to bring the other chief in because I think we're going to move to dispatch in a minute anyways. So we'll let him get his connection up and running.
But Jason, I agree with you with the trails. I walked the trails this weekend, the new trail. UTV would certainly be helpful there.
Yeah, and where I was going to go is just to talk to them about, they seem to have access to grants that the fire department wouldn't. And knowing fire department grant cycles, all UTVs and ATV type vehicles are specifically included from every grant I'm aware of in the fire service.
The only one I could find that would work for that was Firehouse Subs. Some of the towns in Massachusetts have gotten one from them.
Yeah. So not a federal, yeah, obviously a private
Not
one.
a federal
Yeah,
grant, but
makes sense.
a grant.
Yeah. Chief Paulus, are you there?
I'm back.
Quick and easy.
Fire department at work. That's how
Yeah.
you evacuate the building, find out what's the problem.
If only your members were watching the meeting and responded now, Chief.
Yeah. Like to see. Sorry about that.
Yeah. So I was just going to finish the thought. I did bring Chief Paulus in as well, but before we go into dispatch, was just talking to the Trails Committee about grants that they may have. I was just saying that I'm not aware of many federal programs that you typically, or state programs that usually tend to exclude the UTV, ATV type vehicles. Andrew did mention he saw something from Firehouse Subs that they've done in Massachusetts, but just an alternative source that they may actually do the legwork for you to try to secure that, given they would be the, I guess, primary beneficiary of any services rendered in that area.
Yes, and I think if you look at the expanded program description, that's one of the key areas, but there's a multiple uses for it. And we're also looking, you gotta remember we have railroads that go through, and some of the recent news showed that access issues to railroad access is kind of challenging. Lieutenant Spazey is looking to see if there's any opportunity through their system to get some funding for this, but I think everybody needs to know that, yes, access is the bigger issue, but we think that it's the right vehicle for expanded services for a lot of things. So I don't want somebody to think that it's all one, it should be borne by one entity.
It's more for grant funding, not necessarily for them to fund it. Yeah, that's just an alternative source that you wouldn't typically have for all your other stuff you've presented to us.
Right, thank you.
Chief Paulus, are you there?
Can you hear me?
Now I can.
Okay, yes, I'm here. My apologies. I don't know. I'm having a problem with the internet connection, so it might not be the greatest.
Okay, we can hear you. So with that, maybe we'll go into the joint dispatch item. I know is currently shown in the fire department plan, as Andrew noted, but it is $900,000 forecasted out some ways. But I know you both have been active with the Board of Selectmen in terms of very preliminary discussions related to regional dispatch, but also think it's important for capital to understand not necessarily where you're at fully on that, because again, it's the very elementary stages, but what does this 900 truly represent, especially given, I know the answer, but I'm asking this for the benefit of others. We just built a building, and many people obviously believe it's a building that's going to last us a long time, but what that equipment will replace and why that's the appropriate timing. And then we can go into cost and next steps and all that. So I'll let you two decide who talks to what, but I know it's a joint operation. So wanted to give you kind of equal discussion here.
If Chief Paul wants me to, I received the quote from the vendor and I can speak to what it covers. And then I think Chief Pauls can add some information. So this comes up often when we talk about the radio communications in the town, that it's a network of a lot of equipment. So think of the public safety building and the dispatch as a physical room, just like your house, but you have to fill it. So if you had nothing in your house, and when the public safety building was built, there was a lot of new equipment, consoles, radios, physical things that are in that room that have a end of year life that need to be replaced. So that's a lot of computer equipment, a lot of radio equipment that needs to be replaced. And that's about $350,000. These are very conservative estimates, because we're trying to, they have a 10-year life. At that FY 2029, that would be about the 10 or 11-year lifespan. Then we have two sites throughout town. One is over near the old EMC building Causing Road and one's on Overlook. And each of them had, basically think of the old FM radio station that has a lot of equipment that makes the radios work. There's receiver sites and transmit sites. That brings up another cost, and all that requires labor. So there is a lifespan for the radio equipment and transmission equipment. It is not the physical location or the building that it's in that we're trying to upgrade or replace. And again, these are conservative estimates.
Anything you'd add, Chief Paulus?
No, that's it. I mean, I'm sure everybody understands, especially with electronics and technology, it has a shelf life. So we're just trying to make the board and the residents aware of what's going to be coming in, 10, 11 years. It's a built-in cost, and, who knows where those prices will go, but we'll put down a placeholder for now and update it as the years go by.
And Chief Achilles, of the numbers you mentioned, can you approximate how much of that is going to need to happen regardless of where dispatch is located in that 8-year time frame versus if you went to another site, so to say, under a regional approach, how much of that would be borne by the consortium or group that would be under?
I guess I would be hesitant to give you a firm number. It depends how if it takes place and we do a regional dispatch, what is the agreement on cost sharing? But it makes sense that anything that's in our primary dispatch center, that $350,000 probably would not have to be borne because you wouldn't have that as a dispatch and communication center. But I don't know what the cost in this consortium, if that's what takes place, who would cover the cost of upgrading the interconnected sites? We'd still have to have some sites in Southborough, but it could be borne by everybody, or does the agreement in the collective say that it's borne by each community? I don't know.
That's incredibly fair. I was getting at the point you made about the 350. That's maybe a cost that is elsewhere, but obviously there's no definitives regardless.
And we also have, and not for capital, but we have associated operating costs that each of us carry in our budget, not specific to personnel, that also goes along with that.
I assume that's software type licenses, Chief, in particular?
Licensing and systems licensing. And also we have a service agreement that we spend about $17,000 a year. Well, we're doing 1 year of it to make sure the equipment doesn't fail, and that if there's an issue, it's repaired. So there's a context, and I think this will come out as the community moves further into this exploration, what are the true costs?
Okay. Are there any questions from the committee for either chief related to dispatch? Joe, go ahead.
I'd be interested in just hearing if there's any perceived disruptive technologies or schemes that might be coming down the line. I mean, we're looking at 2029, whether it's some sort of cellular booster that would allow us to use something a little bit cheaper rather than installing our own full systems. Anything of that nature that might be on the horizon, or any information?
I don't have any information if Chief Paulus does. We would look at anything that meets this is critical infrastructure, so it has to meet a certain standard. It's required to be backed up. So I think anything we look at, as long as it meets the current industry standard as a critical infrastructure, we have to pay attention to that. And again, this is 10 years out, 9 years out. So I'd be wrong. I'm not an expert in it, so I don't want to forecast what's available.
Fair enough, Chief. Fair enough.
Anything else, Joe? Jeff, I saw you had your hand up.
Just a quick question to understand the full amount. So 900,000, 350 is for the equipment inside the dispatch. So the 550 is for the two locations in Southborough split for labor and parts.
And all the equipment. And,
Okay.
and we had an itemized list, and like I said, the vendor we've worked with, so they know what our equipment is. So to replace what's currently in place, that's their estimate. It does not, I guess to Joe's point, if anything changes or we have to add something or there's cost increases, they were hesitant to speculate all that far out.
And then another question I had, so you mentioned there's a lifespan for the radio equipment and transmission equipment. So for the equipment at those two sites, is that also a 10-year life?
Yeah, it's all, think of it just where it's housed and what it does, but the three sites pretty much do the same thing except for the dispatch console. So there's equipment required at each of those sites.
Okay, no, thank you, appreciate it.
Andrew, you have something?
Yes, Chief, one are we still thinking that we need another radio site? And is that in the plan somewhere?
It's we think we're going to need one, but I think that's predicated on what comes about from the regional conversation, because there's opportunity to leverage other sites, but I think that will have to be decided down the line based on what the town collectively decides to do.
Okay. And then the other one, it might not be a bad idea, I don't know if you have, but to present this or just talk through it with MTC, just to have it on their radar as, technological infrastructure that needs to go in the future. Just to add it to their list. That's it.
Anything else in dispatch? So one of the things I was going to propose is that we as a capital committee, I'm going to make a motion that the capital committee authorize the chair to send a letter to the Board of Selectmen encouraging continued exploration of any and all potential options for dispatch, whether it be standalone or regionalization, given the size of this capital expense that's in front of us. So I'm going to pause there and look for a second.
Second.
Maybe I'll just explain a little bit of my rationale. I know the chiefs have been there once. It's obviously a multi-pronged approach. There's a lot of conditions that Chief Achilles and Chief Paulus put on, what ifs, et cetera. The good news is we have time before we, Southborough, need to replace our equipment. Obviously, we just made the investment a couple of years ago, but time creeps up quickly. And obviously, there are other towns that are in more dire need now of equipment. So being able to kind of bundle that and just, again, encourage the exploration of this. I don't know where it would land, Chief. I'm sure you neither of you have a crystal ball, but I think, offering our assistance as well, given that capital would be a huge part of any analysis there. Obviously, there's an operational aspect to it as well, but I just think encouraging that sort of dialogue wherever it lands is just important. So any questions, comments on that? All right. So Joe, you had second it. We'll do a roll call vote. Hark.
Aye.
Palmer.
Aye.
Pfaff.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye.
And Malinowski is aye. So Chief Achilles, we are technically done on the fire capital plan. If you want to give us an update on the tender and where you're at there, I think it'd be important. It is on our agenda a little later on, but given the AFG developments in the last week, maybe just give a couple minutes on that now, and then we'll turn it to Chief Paulus for the police side.
So as many of you are aware, we sought a assistance to fighter grant from the federal government for the tender in the amount of $400,000. Most of the grants have been awarded already, and the last meeting I was in that spoke to the grants, they said if you didn't get any notification that you were awarded, this past week, then you didn't get awarded and you'll get a letter. So we were unsuccessful in obtaining that grant. It was extremely competitive. And of course, as you know, it was a new vehicle. So we've been working all along the last 3 to 4 months of starting to create the specifications for it. And we're waiting just final design so that we can get the actual cost of what the piece of equipment will be. Once we get that, we'll be talking to the town administrator and Brian to move forward a little bit and enter into agreement to start purchasing it. I mean, to agree to purchase it, which will be a build time of about 9 months to a year, with first payment coming out. Probably I'll work with Brian on it, but probably FY24, late FY23. So that's where we're at.
Any questions for the chief on that? Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah. Does that time frame allow us any time to keep applying for any other grants that may be available?
New vehicle grants are few between. We could try again for the AFG grant, but I think I have some concerns, and we're going to reach out to one of the grant representatives from FEMA in the region to see if we enter into a contract, have one built, and the money has been secured through town meeting, does that negate the opportunity to get a grant? Because part of the grant is showing that you have financial need. So it almost shows that we have money. But I was going to ask, the question is, even if we did that, would we still be eligible? So if we,
Yeah.
And I'm skeptical, but I'm going to make the inquiry tomorrow.
Excellent. Thank you.
Any other questions for Chief Achilles?
Yeah, Chief, I think when you talk to the AFG guys, I mean, I see a lot of other towns and mascot apparatus, in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. I'm assuming they're replacements, which they seem to like, but I'd like to know if any of them are new and if we just got singled out.
And I don't know if they're, I'm not sure if they can, or how they disclose that. But I will ask that question.
Yeah.
All right, Chief Achilles, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll move on to police now with Chief Paulus. So Chief, I don't know if you could hear my opening before. If you have any opening comments, you just want us to be aware of, the committee has seen all your submissions. You're welcome to give any sort of opening kind of statements. Otherwise, I'll just go around the horn and see if anyone has questions for you based on what you submitted for the next year or two.
Sure, that's great.
All right, so just go around the horn then. Start with Joe.
Chief, is the increased cost in the vehicles from the estimates from last year, this year, are they sort of COVID chip related shortage, that sort of thing? Or is this just in the sort of an increase in the cost of the contract?
I think the estimate that I submitted was from the last vehicle we ordered. I won't get any type of pricing probably till the end of October. I don't know how much movement there'll be in the vehicle itself. As you can see in the estimate, it's all the equipment that has to be added into the vehicle. I see that cost rising if they can even get it in any type of timely fashion. Right now, the Ford Explorer that we ordered for last year has actually been sitting on a lot for months. And it's still in the build process because they can't get all the accessories for it. So we're hoping it'll be done in the next few weeks, but that's been the holdup on that. The second car we ordered hasn't even been produced off the factory line yet, and I don't have any type of timeline for that. So I just kind of included a placeholder on the vehicle cost, just to give you some type of idea. As we found this year, and I've also been working with John Parent, we'd order another hybrid vehicle. So there'd probably be about $5,000 in grant money that would possibly be coming with that.
Okay. From what you just said, does that mean we might even be pushing a vehicle into the next calendar year just because we can't get it?
Well, we'd certainly order it, but when it comes, that's going to be a real topic of conversation for every public safety agency, probably police and fire. I think everybody's predicting an extreme shortage and being able to get vehicles.
Is that going to provide any problems for you?
Shouldn't right now with our frontline cars. However, I gave Jason an updated mileage for the rest of the fleet. And I think you can see that the mileage is stacking up real heavily on some of the vehicles. So I don't know how long they'll make it. I'm sure you've seen too, the detail season has just gone nonstop. But I guess good news and bad news, it stocks up the wear and tear on the cruises. But if you look at a submission that I had, the fees along with the cruiser fees for the vehicles brought in $76,000 in fiscal 21 and $60,000 in fiscal year 20.
Thank you very much, Chief.
You're welcome. And also, I got to say, I love the jersey. This was a tough weekend. So good to see you keeping the faith, Red Sox and Patriots.
Andrew's got the matching hat, so I'm going to go to him next.
Thanks. Chief, it looks good. Nothing really. I didn't have on the short sheet. How much was the taser and body camera?
So we already have tasers and we already have cameras in the cruises. Both will need upgrades. Right now, we're spending about $10,000 a year on our current taser lease. The models that we have are circa 2014. They need an upgrade. So we're going to have to do that regardless at some point shortly. The cruiser cameras also outdated. We spend about $4,500 a piece every time we get a new car in. Mm-hmm. They have about a 5-year lifespan. So those two items were wrapped into this. And I'm looking at body cameras. I think what we're pretty much looking at is at one point we were asking in the industry why we needed them. And now there'll be a question of why don't you have them? I think if you looked at the news around the area recently, I believe Westboro is about to go live in the next few months with a body camera program. And Shrewsbury just approved funding to get one underway. I know Upton has them. A lot of communities are in the process of getting them. So I just wanted to put a placeholder, and the system that we'd be looking at would come from Axon, old company name of Taser, where all of these units would be integrated together. It would be a 10-year lease plan. I think you've seen the figures, but it would break down to about $62,000 a year, and that would be soup to nuts to have an in-car camera system, Taser system, and body camera system all integrated together, and the storage and a dedicated cloud, a lot of moving parts. So I could certainly sit down. We could probably have a whole separate meeting about it. And I don't know how close we are to implementing it, but certainly in the next year, I want to be ahead of it if we decide that we're able to move forward with it.
Okay. And that's the new Taser 7s?
Yes.
The only other one is, do you know of any legislation that's looking in the State House or something to mandate body cams or tasers that we could, jump on in the future?
Yeah, there are some small grants out right now. I've been prohibited from applying to them. There's a lot of strings attached for infrastructure that you have to have in place before you can apply for them. I don't know how much they would actually cover. They're just kind of some startup cost right now. I know that there is a legislative committee working on it. The Mass Chiefs Association has a representative on it. Frankly, I would actually hope, and I'd be surprised if sometime in the next years there wasn't some legislative mandate, to include them. I know other states right in the Northeast have gone to that. Maryland, Connecticut, New Jersey. I know Rhode Island is getting theirs rolling very shortly. So I'm actually surprised that the legislature hasn't moved quicker on it.
Okay, so I think, if we do a contract, I think it would just be good to know if there was a a point at which if the state rolled it out, we could kind of have an exit from the contract if the state's going to pay for it.
Yeah, I think a lot of things, the legislative session is just getting rolling. So we'll know more in the months ahead.
Okay, thanks.
Karen?
Yeah. Hello, Chief Paulus. I'm pleased to see that you're considering purchasing a hybrid vehicle for the police cruisers. Is there any option to consider a fully electric vehicle?
Funny, I was watching the nightly news tonight.
We lost you, Chief.
I saw that Ford is going all electric to be electric. And what's that?
We can hear you now.
Okay. I don't know how much of that you heard, but it looks
We
like
lost
Ford,
you at the nightly news.
yeah, they had a thing on tonight that Ford is really upgrading their electrical program, including their Ford F-150 going all electric. I don't know if you follow cars. They make a Mustang SUV version that's very popular right now. That's all electric. I think the only thing standing in the way is when they put it into the Ford Explorer, and then it'll be an option for police. So I think it's on the horizon in the next few years, if I were to estimate.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
And Chief, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe there's an underground conduit to put in charging stations at the building when that time does come to your canopy.
I don't know how far we made it on that. I'd have to go back and look at the plans. I know John might have some plans to run a charging station a lot sooner rather than later. Even if we don't have electric vehicles, we'll be prepared shortly. I think that might even be in the next fiscal year.
Okay. Jeff?
Thank you. I have nothing additional from what's already been asked, so appreciate it, Chief.
So Chief, let me just ask you one clarifying question. Absent the legislative question that I think Andrew mentioned, it sounds like your taser lease is up this year. Body cams would obviously be new versus tasers would be basically a replacement, new technology. Do you fully intend to bring this program forward to the town meeting in the spring? Or is there a chance that you're not, subject to further research? Just looking to see, obviously, because it is a significant increase from what you have. It's obviously given us a ton more, but just looking to see where you're at in terms of, is this definitely coming forward regardless of funding source, or, still in the vetting process because of a lot of other contingencies that you may be looking at?
I think just like we said, I'm looking at the legislative process, but one way or another, I'd like the town to support it and bring it forward. Certainly anything to professionalize the department, I want to be at the forefront of it. And especially other communities have jumped in. So I don't want to be last on that bus. I'd like to institute it sometime over the next fiscal year.
Okay. Certainly answers the question. Any other questions for Chief Paulus before we let him go? All right, Chief, as always, a pleasure. Thanks for joining us, and we'll be in touch.
Okay, thanks, everybody. Have a great night.
You too. I am seeing Jay is already here, so I'm going to bring him in. Hopefully he'll be happy with a 5-minute earlier head start. But if he's not ready, then we'll keep going. So give me a second here. Jay, you there?
Hey.
How you doing?
Good. How are you?
I assume you're ready to go?
As ready as I can be.
All right. So first and foremost, appreciate you joining us. I know this is your first go around with this committee. Obviously, we are probably at the start of the budget process, trying to get our arms around what may be coming forward. The committee has everything that you submitted to date. Obviously, I know that you will continue to probably have needs that come up. I know your stuff will probably get more discussion on funding source. I kind of had put a lot of that off limits on the police and fire side at this point because we don't have some of the other departments. But I know in particular you have one item that you'd like us to consider for the fall. So I want you to think about if you have any opening comments before I let the group go around. But I actually want to start with Mark on this. Mark, can you explain what you explained to me in terms of what was approved for IT, or actually not approved, related to the server infrastructure at the Springtown meeting? Because I think that's incredibly relevant to what Jay may have to answer questions on.
That's funny. So I was actually going to raise my hand so I could jump in early. If you recall at the annual town meeting on May 22nd, there were a number of capital items that were listed under the capital article, non-borrowing. And one of them was $40,000 for IT servers. If the committee recalls, this item, when Tom LaFlamme was still here, Tom submitted an item for the same thing at about $90,000. And Tom then left. MTC took over reviewing of the article and had said, you know what, we really think that we can do this for 40. And everyone said, great, $50,000 less, let's go. And so that was the article that went to town meeting. In the listing of articles, the $40,000 for the IT service was listed right, either I forget if it was before or after the fire turnout gear for $40,000. During the budget process, but before town meeting, Selectman Healy in his discussions with Fay and St. Mark's was successful in getting payment of $20,000 from each institution towards the fire turnout gear, which essentially paid the entire $40,000 that was being sought for the year. When the item for the $40,000 was taken off in the motion, the IT server item came off too. It was inadvertent. I think the only thing that I can say is that because they were both $40,000, it was, like I said, a Scrivener's error, that it got omitted and it shouldn't have. In hindsight, it may not have been a bad thing because in discussing this with Jay, since he's been on board, $40,000 was not going to do what he sees needs to be done. And it would mean that we would have to go back to town meeting and seek additional money beyond the 40 when town meeting may have had the understanding that $40,000 was going to take care of everything. So now Jay was going to have to play from behind trying to explain why we need more. So this gives an opportunity for Jay to present the article that he wants for the IT servers. And I believe, that he's settled on a number and he can explain, the need and what he's been looking at and the evaluation that he's done since he's been here. So is that what you're looking for, Jason?
Yeah, pretty much. Yep.
No, wrong. No, you're Jay. He's Jason. You got to remember, there's got to be a distinction. Otherwise, we're going to have a problem.
I know it in my head. Keep roll with it, Jay. So
Yeah,
I don't know if there's anything you want to add into that.
No, I mean, it's exactly what he's talking about here. And it kind of is, sort of the blessing in disguise in a sense, as far as me having the chance to reevaluate what we need, what our necessities are, how I can build this, but also not be totally surrounded by just building this. So again, some of the money that would be put into this project would not only be to purchase the servers with whichever configuration I choose to go with, which I'm still trying to shop with CDW, talking to HP reps, talking to vSphere, VMware company as well, to kind of get the best solution that we can get in place, that we don't have to spend so much money on equipment, but also have that cushion so that I could spend some money on having a vendor come in and get this installed for me. So I'm not totally focused on trying to get this stuff installed and then losing track of everything else that's going on in the town. So it kind of gives me that leverage to do some of this. I have a lot of talks this week like I said, with CDW. They're going to put me in touch with some of their reps and different technology organizations to give me what they feel are the best options for me. And once I have a little bit more of a fine-tuned number with the quotes that I'm getting from these companies, then I can at least provide it to capital planning and to the town administrator and have a better understanding of where we are.
But let's stay on this topic and then we can go to the other items you've submitted. But in terms of timing, because of what Mark explained, Mark, can you confirm that there is a placeholder for this item absent, obviously, subject to further discussion for the special town meeting?
Yeah, there is a placeholder for this item, Jason. I will also say that we're taking a little bit of a swing and have put the question up through for CARES reimbursement. I think Jay and Brian Ballantyne made I thought it was a good argument for CARES for reimbursement. And Carla McAuliffe, the town accountant, has put that up through to the gentleman at the state, excuse me, who's kind of the gatekeeper for CARES. And we'll see if we get an answer on that. We have not yet. So if the committee does recommend moving forward with this article, fingers crossed, there's a chance we may never spend that money. The only caveat I will add to that, just to kind of dampen any enthusiasm, is that some of the answers on recent CARE submissions from communities, because the accountants are all on a listserv, they all talk to each other, obviously, and some of the reimbursement requests have been coming back, and CARES has been denying some things, which has given us a little bit of a pause on some things we put in for reimbursement. We have not seen the same answer. I don't know if the answers are consistent or they're situational for each community, depending on how they're viewed. So it will be interesting. We hope to hear, relatively soon, maybe in the next week or so, as to whether this will be a CARES eligible item. If it is, then it's something that the town is not going to have to foot the bill for.
And do you if CARES didn't play out for whatever reason, do you plan to take this to the selectmen for ARPA? And or if you did, would that require a town meeting vote, or is it under the selectmen's jurisdiction to fund it?
I believe it's under the selectmen's jurisdiction. I don't think that any additional town meeting action is required. I do think that it's got to be part of a larger plan. So, I don't think the selectmen are going to want to see one-offs. I think they're going to want to see more of a comprehensive, cohesive plan. And I've said this in a couple of other venues. So if I'm repeating myself, I apologize. Some of the selectmen are thinking if we've got 16 items that are part of our normal replacement plans or things like that, that we can take off the deck with somebody else's revenue, then we should do that. And then I've got some selectmen saying this is generational money, once in a generation. We should take a look at doing some things that we normally wouldn't get a chance to do, that, are the type of things that'd be great to do, but they never really rise to the top because, they're big, they're a lot of money. You can think of wastewater, you can think of, issues like that. So again, it's going to be a little bit of a process. But, we have a number of years in which to spend this money. So it's not something that's got to get out the door by the end of the calendar year.
So playing this out, Mark, before I open the floor to the rest of the committee so that they can properly frame any questions they have, are you looking for a vote from Capital tonight, assuming that this is a general fund item, or would you rather us wait until you have an answer and call a special meeting if this is a potential general fund expenditure at a future time between now and November 1st?
So I think it would be beneficial for us to have an answer tonight. The selectmen will officially close the warrant. I mean, we haven't had any additional articles in a week and a half or so. And but they kept it open until Wednesday morning. officially close the warrant, and then a week from tomorrow, October 5th, the selectmen will have to sign the final warrant. We will know in all likelihood before the selectmen sign the warrant as to whether or not, this is going to be CARES eligible. If it's ARPA, I don't know that it falls into the same type of issue as CARES, Jason. Brian can chime in on this, assuming his connection is good enough, but I believe so with CARES, you couldn't seek reimbursement for something that you had funding for. So if we had a town meeting vote and funding in place, then it wouldn't be CARES eligible. I don't believe, with what we know and the guidance that's been available, that same requirement applies for ARPA. So I don't think we're hurting ourselves in terms of potentially spending ARPA money on the servers if, the way that we would if we had a town meeting vote with the money available to us. I don't think it'd be CARES eligible at that point. So we'll have the CARES answer probably before we sign the warrant, before the board signs the warrant on October 5th.
Okay. Welcome, Lisa. So I guess what I'll do is I'm going to go around, see if committee members have questions for Jay on this specific item. Obviously, most of us have vetted it in the past, obviously not the amount that's being requested now. And I'll also ask as you go around, if you don't have a question, just kind of let me know where you stand so I know how to potentially move this forward this evening or not. So I believe I started with Joe last time. So Andrew, we'll start with you.
Thanks, Jay. So Jay, in terms of the 85K, how much is a staff augmentation kind of for the installation versus the actual equipment? Do you know?
I don't have an exact price on what the quote is going to be. And that's only because I have to come up with the actual build for them to say, okay, this is how much it's going to be for that. I can tell you from, some of the servers that I have looked at, some of the options that I have looked at right now, servers ranging between 7,000 to roughly 10,000, depending on what type of setup I get for each one. But that's talking about the host, and then there's the stand. Could roughly be around 12,000. So give or take about that. Above that would be that cushion for the installation part of it. Again, I wish I had a more detailed part of that for you. I have to really talk to them and really decide on what build we go with.
Yeah, so I would suggest separating those two.
Okay.
Because you're going to have probably a salary benefit right now to your budget.
Yeah.
That you could, make the case of we didn't hire somebody that could help install the servers. Therefore, we're going to augment it with installation staff, and you can use that budget salary. You know what I mean? As opposed to, if you lump it into a capital, expenditure thing. So that might get you closer to the 40 and have less of an issue at town meeting. And then, I think, Mark, this is probably something that should come to advisory as well to look at in case we don't have a fall town meeting, and we might want to look at the reserve fund transfer, because I'm assuming, Jay, you don't want to wait till next annual town meeting to do it in, July or August. You want to do it sooner rather than later. So
yeah.
If CARES doesn't come through, this might be a reserve fund, eligible, considering that the budget disappeared somehow.
Yeah.
And it's still an emergency, kind of need for the town.
So I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, go ahead.
I guess my one concern I do have with keeping it at 40 or below is licensing with VMware. So we currently have a very plain service with VMware where we don't have the capability of like vSphere and vMotion, where we're able to like migrate servers back and forth between hosts. In case one host fails, we have that capability of migrating with high availability to another host. Those licenses can be a little bit more pricier than the typical VMware servers that just migrating that stuff. So that's kind of my concern, I would say, with just keeping it under the 40, because then the servers, because of COVID has really put a damper on, not only the chips, but the pricing on a lot of these servers. So having that cushion to be able to get the right and proper VM licensing, get the proper servers and setup. Again, this really depends on how I really focus this setup, over the week. But at least having that, availability with VMware, vSphere, and having that licensing, and also to have someone come in and install it, whether or not I use, as you said, the budget that I currently have for payroll, but at least having that fluff there to be able to purchase the proper license, I would say, is one of my concerns.
Yeah, but again, licensing wouldn't be a capital expense.
Okay.
Probably it would be
I
an
didn't know if
operating.
it
So
would be-
I'm just
okay.
saying 85 doesn't scare me. I'm just saying it would be better if you broke it up into the labor licensing as an annual cost and the ongoing maintenance cost, and then the actual server capital expense.
Okay.
And then I think it would be easier for us to get that budget approved than
Okay.
just giving you a blanket 85. Because the one issue is you might put it in the wrong bucket. And if you tried to pay for licensing out of a server or a physical asset line item, you would be over, you wouldn't have the budget in the right place. So I think it's just chunking it out into the right places. And then I hope you're also running this through MTC, and see what they have. But I think, that's kind of my advisory hat, which is a little bit more of looking at the operation side as well, making sure it's in the right budget. But I think just gotta take a look at where that hits.
Yeah, that makes sense. I didn't think about the VMware not being the capital. I just considered the entire project being the capital expense, but no, that makes sense. I got you.
Mark, I see your hand up. So go ahead before I go to the next member.
Yeah, I just wanted to, I guess, it depends how you, just to Andrew's last point. I mean, I guess it depends on how you look at a capital project. When you look at, Karen Galligan doing a DPW project, it isn't simply construction. Sometimes it's also design. It's also, some of these other pieces too. So I would agree that ongoing maintenance is not a capital item and everything, but if it's included as part of the initial purchase and everything and that, I might look at that differently. The original reason I put my hand up was in terms of, just assuming shifting, extra salary money that we'll have because we haven't hired this second person that the funding was approved for in May. We would have loved to have hired that person already, but unfortunately, process-wise, we need to get the position in the SAP so that can happen. And if in fact we have to wait until town meeting until November 1st for that to happen, by the time the advertisement gets in, by the time we go through the hiring process, and assuming I have to wait anywhere near as long as it took us to get Jay on board, it could be next town meeting by the time we have somebody. Jay is likely going to have to use some of that salary money for a managed service provider to try to provide some of that carrying the workload that he assumed that second position was going to help with, at least as a bridge to getting to that next person. So I just wanted to put that on the table that, yes, we assume there's going to be some money in there, but I think there's going to have to be, some of that salary money, which may have to be shifted to try to help provide, coverage from a vendor that we assumed would be from that employee.
Yeah, I agree, Mark. I just didn't want to put it in because replacement equipment, which is where the servers are, is not, the other stuff would be contracted services. So I just didn't want to have them all in replacement equipment line item and try to do contracted services out of it. I'd rather him break it out.
Right.
Okay, Karen.
Yeah, the only question I have, Jay, is are these servers all replacements or are some of them additions to the server infrastructure you currently have in place?
They would all be replacements currently.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Lisa, I'm going to skip you to let you get caught up a little more in the discussion. Jeff?
Yes. So in terms of the 85,000 that you have on here, I know you mentioned that you're still trying to figure out what it's going to look like, the design, the form, the structure, I guess, whether it's cloud or on-prem. So there's a lot of uncertainty still.
Yeah.
So I guess the only question or recommendation, Jason, when there's a motion, is if we put a cap on that, like not to exceed 85,000. Just so that we're not, we don't have enormous upside risk or I guess downside risk on that. I guess that's the only thing I'm thinking about here.
Good comment, Jeff. I guess Jay, I'd ask your reaction to that.
I mean, I would not like to go over the 85,000. I mean, that's my plan, is to kind of make, discuss with the team here at CDW, what's the best option that I can get for a good price. Believe me, I'm not trying to just spend all the money. But at the end of the day, spending the right amount of money to protect not only our data, but the town at the end of the day, and, the price tag can be, endless. I just saying, in a sense, I also don't want to spare no expense in the sense of making sure that the town is where it needs to be. With that said, I'm definitely going to be, in a sense, budgetary shopping and making sure that I get the right equipment that fits the price tag that we're, that we have the allowance to spend.
Thank you, Jason.
Yeah.
Joe?
I know in the past that there had been discussions about moving things to cloud, and maybe moving away from servers. That was a lot of it that came, at least in my knowledge, before you were ever here.
Yeah.
Could you give a comment to how any discussions went with you in terms of the pluses and negatives of going cloud or away from servers?
Yeah. So currently we have about at least 7 servers currently on site that need to be on-prem. That portion is mostly with public safety, some of the IMC stuff, the servers that communicate with IMC. Patriot is also another server that needs to be on site for the assessors department, unless they decide to move into a different direction with assessing. But the Patriot server is one that needs to be on-prem currently. I did the count with what we have with servers. There's a lot of necessity on keeping some on-prem servers. We need, we currently have a file server. I know that we're trying to, maybe get some of the stuff onto OneDrive, but OneDrive can be that, what if moments if we don't have the data right there in our hands that we can grab it. So, we have a file server. We also have a print server that needs to be on-prem for all the printing services that we currently are utilizing throughout the town. I have had the discussion with MTC as well to kind of discuss how we can maybe merge away from some of that. But a lot of the main bulk of the servers are the IMC infrastructure for the public safety building. So it's tough for me to pull away from any of that stuff. Obviously they need it. So until IMC comes up with an option that they can be cloud, believe me, I would, the less I have to put my hands on and managing, even though I'm managing it in a sense, I would like to just make the phone call and say, hey, my server is down, spin up another one. So the moment we can get into that place, maybe in the next 5 years or so, and next time we're having this discussion about upgrading our servers, I can say, hey, we only need one server for so-and-so because everything else is now cloud-based. But at this moment, I just don't see that opportunity for us to transition into cloud, at least.
Okay, I had a feeling that was going to be about the message here. So thank you, appreciate it.
No problem.
Lisa, I'll go to you.
So again, I apologize for not being able to be here at the beginning of the meeting. What I'm going to do, Jason, is I don't want to delay the discussion any further. I'm going to go back tomorrow, to either tonight or tomorrow morning, and watch the hour that I missed, and I'll contact the department heads directly with any questions that I have.
Okay. So we are going to have a motion coming on this particular item, but it is going to be coming to the selectmen. So I think you'll get another crack at it. Okay. And Jay, my question was along the lines of Jeff's, in terms of you cautioned a few times that you're still out there looking at quotes, et cetera. Are these state bid list type items, or are you actually having to go out and get 3 quotes and do that sort of process? As
of right now, that's why I've been communicating with. They are part of the state bid with CDW, and I've also been talking to. I know that Lori is not part of the selectman's office, but she's been a really good ear to lean on when it comes to a lot of. She has a lot of information that I don't know. So I kind of poke her ear a little bit on things that I should know about the state bid list and who I should be, talking to as well. But yeah, they are part of the state bid list. So if I have to, I can just go directly to CDW with what I'm trying to get.
Okay. So I'm going to make a motion. We can obviously discuss further, but I'm going to make a motion that pending the outcome of the CARES inquiry, that the capital committee support a sum of money not to exceed $85,000 to be added to the fall special town meeting warrant article to support the IT department related to server and other infrastructure needs. There a second?
I'll second it, Jason. I have one more question for Jay, if I could.
Absolutely. Go ahead.
Sorry, might come through.
Yeah. Jay, one quick question is, did anything come out from the National Guard assessment based upon our servers that had, maybe changed how we were planning or facilitated anything? And you don't have to go into any complete detail with any confidentiality, but just curious.
There wasn't too many dings when it came to our servers, except for in a sense, how can I word this without updates in general are always, that's everybody's big hit when it comes to anything across the board. So without, really blowing us up in any way as far as divulging information, just updates when it comes to servers. And I've been trying to apply a lot of those patches over the last couple months since that's happened. So no, when it came to our servers physically, just making sure we're in the next stance and then the next application, the next version for everything, and just keeping up with that. So
I just wasn't sure if there was any server room security upgrades we needed.
I'm going to stop there. Stop. I'll give Jay the benefit of the doubt. I think. Call him if you have questions, Andrew.
Yeah, no, but Andrew, I'm more than willing to go over some of the stuff too if you need to go in deeper into it as well. Definitely.
Joe, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I do have a question. Does the motion include one-time costs for installation as well as maybe one-time software purchases that will need to be made? Is that considered infrastructure?
In my opinion, it was. It's basically to complete the project that he's looking to complete related to these physical servers that we have.
So it include comprehensive costs for the installation and uprunning for it. Okay. All right.
Any other questions, comments, discussion on that particular topic? All right, roll call vote. Braccio,
Abstain.
Hark.
Aye.
Palmer.
Aye.
Pfaff.
I'm going to abstain so that I can vote in advisory.
Wheeler.
Aye.
And Malinowski's aye. So that is 402. Did I get that right?
Yeah.
Okay. I guess Jay had submitted one new item, which was related to Wi-Fi. And he also informed me, which I put in my memo, that he's pushing out the townhouse wiring another year. So I didn't know if anyone had any questions related to those two items for Jay while we had him. I know the Wi-Fi looks like it's another project for you, Jay, that is still very much in its infancy.
Yeah.
So, welcome any comments from you or questions from the committee, but it sounds like it's going to require another discussion regardless of what we talk about here tonight on that particular topic.
Definitely. A lot of what I put in that memo is what's going on with the town. It definitely needs a revamp on Wi-Fi currently. Just not enough access points, not enough ability for employees to leverage the speeds that we have and the internet that we have available for them. So having that in locations that really are in dire need of getting it would benefit a lot of the employees, including the DPW, with some of the stuff that they work on there. They have physical equipment that they can't, it would be good for them to have the iPads or whatever they're using to update their equipment right there on the shop floor, but instead they're kind of going back and forth, making sure there's updates, stuff like that. It is definitely a necessity and a lot of dead spots. There's a lot of dead spots in the townhouse. There's a lot of dead spots in a few of the other buildings that just need to be addressed. So it's definitely it's a project that I have I've had the privilege of encountering in the past in my past locations, and it's always a good time. And I'm rolling my eyes with that one, but it's definitely something that I feel that the town really does need to step up and get that infrastructure in place for them.
Any questions for Jay?
Just one little one, Jay. I think you pretty much answered it, but I was originally going, is this a town-wide Wi-Fi or public access Wi-Fi? But sounds like it's more for the building access points.
Yeah.
But I always thought some public access Wi-Fi in downtown or around the townhouse, and some of those places might not be a bad project to look at that maybe we could leverage with this project, but just something to think about.
Yeah, and even with this project, that's part of what I'm trying to encompass in the scope as well, is seeing where it is utilized in the town from the residents' perspective, and then it gives me an opportunity to kind of segregate where the traffic is going in the future, so that only the public is using the public and the town employees are using the town. So that we're not having issues with bandwidth internally or anything like that. So yeah, it's definitely, like Jason said, it's a very premature in the sense of where I'm at right now as far as talking about it, but it's definitely something that it's a necessity. It's going to be something that we're going to need in the next 5 years and on. So
Great.
Go ahead, Joe.
Not to ask an in-depth question, but this is really a reimagining of the Wi-Fi access system, not just a replacement of certain equipment. Is that what I'm?
Yeah, no, this is,
hearing?
it's a replacement and a reimagining of the entire
Okay.
project, because
All right.
like I said, there's a lot of places that it just needs to be revamped.
Okay.
Yep.
Great. Thanks.
Yep.
Any other questions for Jay? All right, Jay, greatly appreciate you joining us.
Yep.
We look forward to future conversations, and have a good evening.
Thank you. You too. Nice meeting all of you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Have a good day.
Okay. So we're still on agenda item 4, discussion departments to meet with for the next meeting. So as I gave a preview of earlier in the meeting, I fully expect DPW would be ready for that meeting. Facilities is already ready. So thanks to John for that and Karen for catching up. I don't know if Recreation's getting ready, so I'll continue to check in with them. What I will say on DPW though is there is a placeholder on the special town meeting warrant related to Northborough Road. Mark had shared some details. I didn't feel comfortable revising the agenda close to the meeting to try to get it in tonight. But I do think we need to get Karen here for a quick meeting so that we can make a recommendation on that. So I am going to be looking to do a quick, probably 30-minute or less meeting to deal with that in the next week or so. I don't know what people's views are of doing next Monday at night. I know mornings are very tough for the school-aged, those with school-aged children. So welcome thoughts on timing for that, but I just want to follow the right process there.
Jason, Monday night works for me.
Any objections to that?
It might not work for me.
And Jason, what would the rush be for?
Unless,
Special town meeting.
But to what? Get it in the warrant, printed warrant?
Well, to make a recommendation, we can't wait till October 18th because it's got to go to Board of Selectmen and it's got to go to advisory still.
I'm just trying to.
What'd you say?
I was just saying I'm trying to work backwards from when like advisory and Board of Selectmen would be.
Well, we're only a month away from the special town meeting. So if I'm shaving another week off, that gives them 3 weeks, right? I mean, I can go out another week, but we wouldn't be able to meet on Monday because that's a public holiday.
It would work for me if it was at after 8 PM.
Andrew, does that work for you?
That would work.
Okay, let's do 8 PM next Monday. It'll be that item, and we're gonna have an invoice from the space needs. Those are gonna be the 2 agenda items. And then obviously, if whoever has minutes has them, great. If not, we'll do them at the next meeting. Appreciate that. So let's go to chair and members updates. School research subcommittee has not met since the last meeting. However, in the very, very near future, the superintendent will be posting a special school committee meeting to present his recommendation to the school committee and to the school research subcommittee of this committee. I will let the committee know once that date is decided upon. I believe the superintendent was polling the school committee in the last couple of days. I will not post a meeting for the full committee. So just be aware of that. There would be a report back to this committee for action, that any actions that we may take coming out of that discussion. So any questions on that update? It will likely be in late October is the timing I was told. Andrew, Joe, any updates from your subcommittee related to South Union?
Nothing too much. We were supposed to meet Thursday, but due to some technical difficulties, we pushed it off a week.
Okay. Next one was follow-up I had from the last meeting related to the carryover account balances, specifically related to the CUNY preservation funds. I know we agreed that I was going to send a letter to them. I became aware that they did discuss some of the balances in a meeting, but I candidly haven't watched the meeting, so I was uncomfortable sending a letter without knowing what they decided on. So that's on me to just watch and or read the minutes if they're available, so that I know how to properly frame it based on the discussion. So that item is still open. Any questions on that?
What meeting would they discuss that?
CPC, community preservation. I don't remember the date. It was in and around the time of when we discussed it, though. Okay, so let's go to space needs study update. So I received an invoice. I will forward it to the committee. We will discuss and vote on it at the next meeting. However, I had a to-do from the last meeting to go speak with the Board of Trustees at the library in particular. I did that. It was a public meeting last week. They took it all in. I would say there was a wide variety of opinions, both from the board as well as the library director, in terms of the potential path forward. I would say, however, the common theme was very open to continuing to work with us in thinking about all potential options. There was a general, genuine sentiment of, appreciation back to Capital for making sure that we are actually thinking about their needs. So they wanted to send that thank you along. It has come up in subsequent conversations, which we'll get into in a second. So I think that was kind of the positive, the constructive feedback that they did give. Again, this was in a public tape meeting. Was, I think there's varying degrees of how far they want to go with or without a grant cycle. Some members were along the lines of they just want to follow a library grant. Why wouldn't we take money? But obviously I said, we owe a financial analysis when we get to that point of the pros and cons of waiting for grant cycles based on time value of money and potential what if scenarios. What came out of the Library Board of Trustees meeting was it became very clear to me that some of the space needs that were presented to us, were being reviewed in different ways, in different lights. And Ken had done some benchmarking, as I think you all remember from his presentation, to other libraries, et cetera. So the library director, Ryan, and the assistant director, Kim, as well as Janet Maney, who is the Library Board of Trustees nominee, had a meeting with myself and the architect today. And we just discussed the path forward. And I think generally where we're at is obviously there's been no formal votes from the board, et cetera, but they just asked us to keep them informed of where we're going, what we're doing. And, we will work with some of the numbers that Ken has for now, once we understand the outcome of the school process, but everyone agreed we need to wait for the school process to finish up to understand what puzzle pieces we may or may not have. I think it became abundantly clear, if everyone remembers, the opening I gave before Ken gave his presentation last time, that I will reiterate here, and I apologize for repeating it, is the scenarios that were thrown around, definitely through kind of what if, the what if scenarios that were thrown out there, definitely, obviously some people like that, some people don't like that. So caution anyone, right? We're going to have to do what if scenarios. It's the only way we're going to get to reality. Knowing that this is going to be a fully vetted plan. And I think one of the things the library director emphasized that I committed to, that we would come back as part of any phase 2, is the community involvement. I think we've all said that all along, is how you're going to get feedback from the community about what they want in each of the facilities, but we kind of have to have some general plans of what the possible are. Otherwise you're dealing with something that you really can't ring fence in really trying to build consensus. So they'll be standing by waiting for us to come back. They're going to continue a little bit of dialogue in the background with Ken, just to help them understand some of the benchmarking that he did. But there's really not much we can do until we understand what's all in play, so that we can then start to work on kind of phase 2 of this. Any questions, comments on that specific update? Okay. So the one thing I would like to recommend is, given, assuming that there is a special town meeting, as many of you know, we funded part of, I'll call it phase 1 of this process, through a capital studies article from 2 years ago. And there used to be an engineering fund that the Board of Selectmen had at their disposal, based on recommendations from the town administrator, to do special studies. And I believe, Mark, that was predominantly depleted when John Parent needed to do, obviously, all of the legwork to bring a substantive proposal forward to Townhouse. I know there is some small dollar amounts that will be left in both funds, but nothing of substance that you would be able to go out and do anything more substantial. So I was going to recommend and look for feedback from this committee, whether we recommend a replenishment to the capital studies fund of approximately $30,000, so that we do not have to wait until July 1st if we are presented with other what if scenarios to continue to advance this process. Again, we don't have to spend it. We can easily return it if something goes sideways, or the plug is pulled. But what I didn't want to be left here with is decisions to be made and no funding source to go and get expert help, because clearly this sort of stuff requires outside expertise to move forward. So just wanted to get a sense of the committee, specifically related to the space needs study, of whether we make a recommendation along those lines.
Yeah.
Would you say, Jeff?
I think it's a good idea. There's no harm if we're not going to use it. And I think we've shown that we've put to good use in at least 3 situations so far, where the town has recognized some tangible benefit from the studies that have been performed. So I think that makes sense.
Go ahead, Joe.
That last comment you made, was that meaning that this money would be pertaining to the studies needs, or just any studies we want to do?
I would frame any motion as a replenishment of the capital studies fund that already exists.
Okay.
My intent would be that it would be specific to developing this 10-year capital plan that is obviously very heavy on building infrastructure for a number of organizations in town. What
Okay.
organization and how that comes together, I think we need to have a little bit of flexibility, because we don't know the cards we're going to be dealt yet.
I don't want to speak for Andrew, but when I'm looking at for instance, the subcommittee with Shopsy, in discussions I had with making phone calls for some of the stuff we were doing there, I could see the potential for needing, maybe some money for some certain endeavors in that regard, and whether we would bring that to this committee and fund it through this committee or go elsewhere to maybe fund those is a question that I would have. Not necessarily knowing the exact amounts or what for, I could easily see that committee needing some resources at one point or another for to move certain things forward, whether it's grant proposal wise or in terms of studying proposals or developing plans or plots or other sorts of endeavors that would need to do to facilitate movement of that property forward and developing a plan to bring to other entities in town meeting.
Jason, can I jump in on this?
Go right ahead.
So Joe, I think that as long as it's a study and looking at affordable housing, I don't know why you wouldn't consider coming to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund
Okay.
to have them fund any study that has to do with housing.
Sure.
Mark, correct me if I'm wrong, but this falls within the four corners of, the charge of the trust. We funded the housing study for Shopsy, so I don't know why we couldn't certainly do this as well.
Would that committee, in looking for certain types of grants, also go there to have those grants forwarded or made, completed, and submitted?
Grant writing work, you mean, type Joe?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to get too far into it because I don't want us to go down that rabbit hole. But for instance, there are some certain entities where, like CDAC was proposed to me, where we would go for grant funding for planning of a project. So we could actually get money for pre-planning and putting together a project in terms of developing the actual plot plan to be submitted for, approval by the town and for then submitted for further grants down the line. And whether that's a separate endeavor, we're going to go through other avenues to fund, or whether it falls under this committee's purview to facilitate to fund is sort of what I'm asking.
Yeah.
I'm not really sure.
Yeah, I
how
would
to
say,
answer
Joe,
that one, Joe.
it could be the trust fund, or it could maybe even be CPC admin funds.
Yeah.
But
Sure.
again, that's a whole other
I
committee.
just want to, I don't know. I just want to float that out there because I don't want to handcuff this committee in one way. I also don't want to underfund it if that's where we're thinking that might go. That's all.
Yeah.
I think it falls outside of this committee is my personal view.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of options though.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand. I do. I really understand, which is why I sort of put it that way, because I'm not exactly sure where it's going either, but.
I'm kind of leaning somewhere similar to Joe. And if we were going to replenish it, I think I'd rather replenish it in the selectmen's budget and give more options there. I think this capital has had a good chunk of money to do stuff already. And if we needed more, we could go certainly ask the selectmen's but there's going to be stuff that is going to be considerate of the schools and things of that nature that, might be better at the selectmen's purview.
Selectmen don't have anything to do with the schools.
But it's more universal than just cap.
But this is specifically for capital. I mean, we have to go to the selectmen anyways to get a contract or award to anything to anyone of any dollar amount. So I don't understand what you're proposing, Andrew. It's the same thing.
I think I would, if as a town resident, if we were going to put additional money in the coffers, I would rather have it in the selectmen's purview to do traffic studies, to do whatever else that they need to replenish on top of capital stuff. I think until we get to a annual town meeting that more people will attend, I don't think just fulfilling our capital one so that we can spend some more money things. I mean, I already know people in town think that we're spending a little bit too much on studies to begin with. And I think putting it through a fall town meeting that we're probably going to get few people to join, I'd rather wait till an annual. Or put it to the selectmen, authority. But that's my opinion.
Well, I think the selectmen, I don't want to speak for you, Lisa, but I think the selectmen want to do traffic studies. It's on their responsibility to bring an article forward. I'm trying to bring something focused on, it's specifically under space needs study. It's if we have to advance this in the next 6 to 9 months, we can't get funding until July 1st if we don't do anything now. Is really the issue. So the question I have for the committee is, do we want to be sitting here in December with the potential that we have an actionable item that a good chunk of the community would support, and be sitting here saying we can't do anything, or have to go to the reserve fund, Andrew, which is already depleted, an advisory, and try to beg for pennies and lose 6 months of potential construction or planning, given we've now waited a year and a half to get to this point, and it seems like we're at a crossroads.
I
I
would rather
think this,
for an
sorry, go
annual
ahead.
town meeting. I think an annual town meeting is a better place to have to add that funding. I think it's also a better place to do the MIS funding, but we already, that didn't get approved at town meeting, which was an issue. So I'm less concerned about that. But I think if we're going to add, I'm a firm believer that the fall town meeting shouldn't be budgetary unless there's an emergency. And I don't feel this qualifies as an emergency.
Okay, Karen, you've had your hand up.
Yeah, it's just about what you've been talking about, actually. I'm in favor of having that 30,000 to use if we need to. But my question was, where do the funds come from? And so I think that's what you're talking about. So it has to be approved at the November meeting.
To be included in this year's tax rate, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Andrew, I think the genesis of what I'm looking to do is ask the Board of Selectmen to discuss it. It's ultimately going to be an article they would sponsor. We can't sponsor an article. I just think we have an obligation to tell them what could potentially be coming down the pike. They've put a lot of trust in what our process is here to move forward. And I think it's just irresponsible for us not to at least raise it. I'm not offended if someone chooses not to advance it, but I think I'm not doing my job as chair to not be thinking ahead of what could happen here. And I'm not sure I agree with emergency, not emergency. We're having a special town meeting for things that are clearly not an emergency, but are needs of the business of the town to be taken care of, some of which will be budgetary. There are departments bringing budgets forward. There are bylaws that are trying to be passed and other items. I don't know, Mark, you can go into whatever else on the warrant, but the fall town meeting has always been also phrased as a potential avenue to advance capital items in the off cycle to the extent something wasn't ready in the spring. We don't really have any of those. We clearly have a unexpected omission, which we just talked about. And then I think we have a development here where we're getting to a point where we may need to make some decisions. And if we have to wait till July 1st, we have to wait till July 1st. I mean, I'm happy to make a much broader presentation. It's probably gonna be a much larger number at that point, but I'm just trying to make sure we're not handcuffed in any way, shape, or form. So that was the intent. I go with whatever the committee wants to do on this.
I think I would say I'm not opposed to seeking funds. If the idea is that we're going to be forwarding an initiative that really, I mean, I don't think moving at a snail's pace because we have to wait for annual meeting makes any sense at all. And this is one of those things where it's like, I agree with Andrew. It's not an emergency, but at the same time, this committee is at the foot of pushing these things forward. So if we have to wait an extra 6 months to push something forward, and then we're stalling the whole town process, and I don't like the idea of that at all, especially if we're dealing with some fairly significant moves in changing the physical structure of location and departments and interests. I mean, we can look right back to the elderly center wanting to put a living room on, and that's been stalled out for a year and a half, 2 years, and that group is not going to wait forever for us to make space needs decisions or to make physical department decisions on where we can accommodate them in a different way if that's not what we're going to do. So I think in that way, I support the initiative.
Yeah, I think it's going to allow us to bring a more thought out plan to the annual town meeting. Like the seniors are going to move forward on their addition if we don't have another plan. Is that the right answer? I don't know. But we need to be ready to deal with that. So I'm going to move that the capital committee recommend to the Board of Selectmen that they consider a warrant article related to capital for an additional $30,000 to be brought forward at the special town meeting to deal with specifically the ongoing space needs and broader 10-year capital plan for the town of Southborough, specifically related to infrastructure. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any further discussion?
I think Mark had his hand up for a second. I wasn't sure if he had something.
Well, I don't want to get in the way of a vote, but
Well, we're in discussion.
yeah, okay. My only comment is I'll fall on my sword in terms of whether this was going to be just a replenishment of this existing engineering funds article that has been under the selectmen's purview for a number of years versus capital. My conversation initially with Jason was, that engineering funds have pretty much been, hadn't been used very much at all prior to my arrival. I forget. You'd have to pull Brian Ballantyne back in to tell you how many years it had been for that to be spent before I came. But once we started doing capital projects, we used those funds to help handle some of the studies and things that needed to happen in order to keep those moving forward. So my suggestion was, rather than, that seemed to be what it was used for, it has been used for, it only made sense then, you might as well put it, as part of the capital article. And the use is going to continue pretty much what it has been. It's just whether you want to make it as part of the capital article or you want it to, stand alone as its own separate article in the fashion that it was before. So I think it's just a process issue, as to where it actually sits, but the use is pretty much going to be the same.
Yeah, I would say I support it more in the old version versus the current capital planning committee article. I would be in favor of that versus in favor of replenishing ours.
I think, Lisa, you can bring that piece of the discussion to the board, because it goes to phrasing of how you put it in the warrant. My motion was silent on that, I believe, unless anyone wants to correct me before it should come.
Well, it was a replenishment, right? So the replenishment of our existing capital planning committee warrant, capital item, not the engineering budget. Right?
Who has the exact motion?
Move the committee recommend to the Board of Selectmen that they consider a warrant article related to capital for an additional $30,000 to be brought forward at special town meeting to deal with ongoing space needs and a broader 10-year capital plan for the town of Southborough, specifically related to infrastructure.
So, Andrew, I think that gives Board of Selectmen wiggle room to go either way. Do you agree with that?
I would agree. I think the additional is where I got in my head. Lisa's here. She hears the conversation. If the wiggle room is there, I'm happy with it.
The intent is certainly there. I'll go on record with that. So any further discussion on that? All right, roll call. Braccio.
Aye.
Hark. Can't hear you.
Aye. Sorry.
Palmer.
Aye.
Pfaff.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye.
And Malinowski is aye. Lisa, I'll give you a memo for your board.
Thank you.
Ongoing capital project updates, Townhouse, very quickly. Same status as last time. They're waiting for a memorandum of understanding with CPC before they can actually spend any money. So they can't go out and have the OPM draft the RFQ for the architect until that happens, because we'd have a bill from the OPM. So I don't have a date on when that's going to occur, but I know there are ongoing discussions. Questions on that? The tender I'm going to skip because the chief gave that earlier in the meeting. And Joe, I'm going to go to you on library interior renovations.
I'll have an update for the committee next Monday.
Okay, great. They're likely, I'm not going to put that on the agenda to stick to my 30 minutes, so you can go on the 18th and have a double update.
Okay.
Update on item 8, capital planning standing committee bylaw. Obviously, this is not going to be a special town meeting warrant article, but we are going to be on a future advisory agenda, like I discussed last time. I think it's incumbent on this committee to draft the language, i.e. keep exactly the same language that existed previously, or propose potential edits based on the feedback we gathered at town meeting. So I will put that on a future agenda. What I will ask is everyone look at the last version. My understanding, and Andrew, correct me if I'm wrong, advisory is not bringing any changes at the special town meeting that would impact this. But obviously you may bring stuff in the future that may coincide with this, but I think it's worthy of a conversation between the two committees once we get to that point.
Correct. It looks like advisory would just be looking at the changing it to 7 members and adding a formal vice chair. But nothing having to do with the ability to sit on capital.
Okay. Item 9 is public comment. I'm seeing none. So is there any other business? All right, so I will schedule us for 8 p.m. next Monday night, half an hour meeting. Obviously, that's assuming Karen's available, but I'll have Mark maybe ready to go if Karen isn't available to discuss that project, just in the interest of obviously advancing that, given that that road is still closed. So, and then we'll be ready to go on the 18th for the next round of departments. All right, I'll make a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, roll call vote. Brascio,
Aye.
Park,
Aye.
Palmer,
Aye.
Bath,
Aye.
Wheeler,
Aye.
and Malinowski's aye. Have a good evening.